Hello, Red Sox fans. I'm here to talk about the first half of the season, or the first unofficial half of the season, as the All-Star game is upon us tonight. And the Red Sox end their first half 49-38, so they are within 2 games of the AL East, playing pretty good baseball after a 7-2 homestand. However, before that, they had a pretty weak road trip and a very weak month of June. So, in my opinion, the jury is still out on which Red Sox team is going to show up in the second half. And as a whole, I feel like some of the Red Sox success has been a bit deceptive. Let me explain. Their hitting has, for the most part, carried them, especially in the month of May, when they were, killing opponents like the Athletics and the Braves and the Astros. And I know you got to beat who's on the schedule, but you look at what was more discouraging than anything isn't, the fact that they lost to some good teams down the stretch, or, that they've lost to the Orioles, who are leading the division, but it was more the last road trip where they lost 2 out of 3 to the Tampa Bay Rays, a team that had lost like 12 in a row, and, lately I think they've lost 22 of their last 25 games. Well, 2 of those wins were against your Boston Red Sox, so the Red Sox at times have played like just a lousy baseball team, and then other times they played like a great baseball team. And really, even though, the record doesn't show it, that's what it's been for the past 3 years, really, going back to 2014. The team has finished with a pretty bad record the past couple seasons, but you look at certain stretches of the year and you say, this is a team with some talent. Whether 2014 they had pitching, last year they didn't really have much of anything, but you still felt like they could do something, and it's just been this kind of disappointment with the Red Sox. I just don't get the feeling, and it's almost the same for this year's team, I don't get the feeling that this team is really in it for the long haul. Like, in other words, I feel like they can win a game or two. I feel like they're not, a step below the competition. I think this year they kind of benefit from there not being a big dominant team in the American League. In the National League, you have the Cubs and the Giants, but in the American League, other than maybe the Texas Rangers, who do you really have? The Cleveland Indians have a really good record, but they're a bit unproven. So I feel like in the American League, you can get away with playing okay baseball just because everybody else is playing okay baseball or worse. But in general, I don't get the feeling from this team like this is a big bad Red Sox team. I know the record is good. I know that they're within striking distance, and I know that the Baltimore Orioles are not necessarily going to strike fears into the heart of any opponent just because outside of Chris Tillman, they really don't have a pitcher where you go, oh man, we got no chance against this team. Now, you look at the Red Sox, and they got David Price for just that reason. When the Red Sox used to face David Price, you knew it was going to be a tough outing. You knew, you're going to be lucky to get 1 or 2 runs off David Price in 8 innings. And, sure enough, when David Price went to Toronto last year, they became an instant contender because he was shutting opponents down every 5 days. He had a ridiculous ERA in his time in Toronto. Then he comes to Boston, and again, you're thinking, okay, even if the Red Sox aren't the best team, they'll have somebody 1 every 5 starts that'll shut everybody down. Well, that hasn't really been the case. I know Price's last start, he was really good. I know a few starts before that he was good, but it's been so inconsistent. His ERA is over 4.5. He's an okay pitcher at this point, and that's putting it mildly. And even when the season started and he was getting bombed, and everybody was saying, oh, he'll figure it out, I just didn't feel confident about that just because of how the Red Sox have been the past few years. I feel like since 2014 we've been hearing they're going to figure it out. Oh, they're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. They never figure it out. This year they're finally above 500 for the first time in who knows how long. But do you still, at least me, I don't get very confident with that. There's been games all season where, they had a lead and they blew it, they came back, they scraped out a win, and it's great, it's exhilarating, you win a game where you were down by 6 runs, but it's like, how did you get down 6 runs to begin with? And I don't mean to dwell on the negative, but it just seems like with this team, when they win, it's like this really gut-wrenching, hard, grinded-out experience, when they win. When they lose, they get annihilated, or they lose in the last couple innings because they came back after being down by 6. But, it's just kind of like, more often than not, the Red Sox are clawing their way back into games, and it's working. That's one thing I have to say. This team is entertaining, if nothing else. The last couple of years, I always got the feeling when the Red Sox fell behind by a run or 2 in the 6th inning, well, this is over, they're not going to come back. This year, even if they go hitless for most of the game, I feel like they can score 5 runs in an inning really quick. And that's a good feeling to have. And that's good for the team. That's good for the fans. It is good. And the Red Sox are far and away the best offense in the American League. But what is that really going to get them outside of a American League offense title. I mean, what we're going to look back at the 2016 Red Sox and say, that was one of the best offensive teams of all time? I only think you say that if they win. Like, if they win the World Series, even if they go deep in the playoffs, then maybe you say that. You don't see too many, wild card teams or playoff teams or teams that missed the playoffs where you go, oh man, they had a great offense though. I mean, probably like the early 2000s Rangers had really good offensive teams. We don't really remember them because they didn't really win that many games. Now this Red Sox team has something, and that's what makes them so perplexing, is that much like the last couple of years, they have something where you go, all right, this is their chance to make a statement. I just hope coming out of the All-Star break isn't like last year. Because last year's Red Sox team, even though they only won 78 games, they were within striking distance of the division around this time. They were like probably 5 or 6 back, which isn't too insurmountable. But then, sure enough, the Red Sox came out of the All-Star break and lost like 7-10 or something, and you were looking at the standings going, well, that was fun. So I hope that the trading deadline at least has some meaning this year. And, whatever they do. But I just hope that at least you're looking at the trading deadline as a buyer, as somebody who wants to improve the team because the team is that close to contending. But undoubtedly, I mean, getting back to the main point of all this, the record is good. The baseball has been, for the most part, better. I'm not, ashamed to watch the games anymore. I know earlier in the season I was kind of frustrated. I still am at times because I feel like this team has more than they show. They make really sloppy errors. Their bullpen kind of sucks at times. Their hitting is good, but even at times that doesn't always come through, especially when there's runners in scoring position. They find some way to get out of the inning without scoring any runs. And the starting pitching is just atrocious after Stephen Wright, Price, and Porcello. And even, Porcello, I have to say, has been the one consistent. Whereas Stephen Wright's been fantastic for the most part and had a couple bad outings, and Price has been just awful at times. Porcello's been always decent. He usually gives you 5 or 6 innings, 2 or 3 runs, maybe more, maybe less. He always gives you something around that. His ERA is around 3.6, so it's around what that is, about 3.5 runs a game. He keeps you in the game for the most part. But then you got Clay Buchholz, who's just a disaster. Sean O'Sullivan wasn't bad, but now he's on the DL. Eduardo Rodriguez, and that's perplexing that Eduardo Rodriguez is coming back so soon after being sent to the minors. He's going to start against the Yankees, which I'm not very happy about, but whatever. Maybe John Farrell knows something I don't, but I was going to go into a whole rant on John Farrell and some of his decisions, but it's just not. I try to just look at the team as a whole, not just one reason why they're succeeding or failing, but yeah, John Farrell definitely hasn't helped matters with some of his decisions. And, Eduardo Rodriguez has been just a train wreck. That doesn't mean I think he'll never be good. I just think that maybe this year they need to take it a little slower, even with the pitching staff being what it is. I don't think rushing him back up is going to make matters better. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it seems like for the past several months it's been, when they bring up that guy, Ilias, I think his name was, Rowan Ilias, when they brought him up, or Henry Owens, you were hoping maybe you were going to get somebody good. Because, you hear about these players. You hear about these minor league prospects and these players, who are going to come up and pitch for the Red Sox. And you're optimistic. Maybe they won't get a perfect game, but they'll be good. And then, sure enough, they get bombed for 9 or 10 runs. And you're like, well, great. Glad we waited for that. But at least the prospects have come along for the Red Sox. I was skeptical about this, as all of you know, about Bogarts and Betts and Bradley and all them ever becoming anything good. Although Betts has, for the most part, been consistent in his career. He's never really hit terribly, but he's been really good this year. And so is most of the lineup. So David Ortiz's last year, of course, being a big headline. I hope that they can do something, the Red Sox, to make this second half impressive. Maybe send David Ortiz out on top, but I'm not very hopeful of that, to be honest. Even if the Red Sox do improve, I feel like, despite there not being a clear-cut favorite in the American League, I don't see the Red Sox being there either unless they really add an amazing starting pitcher at the deadline, which I don't think they're going to do. I think they'll add an okay starting pitcher at the deadline. I think they'll add a reliever or maybe a backup outfielder, but I don't think they're going to add anything of significance. If they do, then that changes the conversation. I think the Red Sox are capable of winning the division just based on where they are and where the competition is. But even if they do, I don't know how deep they go in the playoffs, especially if they play the Indians or the White Sox or Texas in the first round. I don't know how far they go in the playoffs. So we'll have to see what happens, where the chips land. it was a pretty good first half of the season. I know it sounds like I'm kind of bagging on the Red Sox. I just don't know how believable this 49-win record is. It just doesn't. It feels like they really cheated a few wins out, if that makes sense. But we'll see. We'll see if they're a better team in the second half or a worse team. Until then, enjoy the All-Star break, and I will talk to you later.